Greetings, YouTube. The United States is a laughing stock on the international stage for any number of reasons. Just reach into most of our political or social behaviors and attitudes, and you'll find one that people are sniggering at on the international community. But one of my favorite and most absurd things that we do in the United States is abstinence-only sex education. Now, as I've spoken about this in the past, apparently, as soon as you have a child, parents forget what it was like to be a teen. They just turn that part of their brain off and walk away. Because they seem to completely forget about the fact that when you're a teen, you want to have sex. And if given the opportunity, you have sex. Teens have sex. Teens have been having sex for as long as there have been teens. Teens have been having sex since before humanity was here. Our ancestors, they had sex as teens. So having sex as teens is perfectly and utterly natural. It is the norm. And yet parents continually amaze me in their efforts to fight that reality. That's what it is, folks. Reality. 95% of Americans have premarital sex. Yes, even your parents and your grandparents, regardless of what they may be telling you. So, abstinence-only education is not only dumb, it is dangerous. It spreads disease and unwanted pregnancies. Because those kids, when they finally decide to have sex, and they're going to decide to have sex as teens, are not going to be educated and prepared. And even another level of absurdity is what I just told you, abstinence only. That's the entirety of the sex education. Don't have sex. I just gave it to you for free. Didn't cost you a penny. And yet, there are speakers who get paid to talk to teens and tell them, in more than one manner I assume, don't have sex. Even though teens have sex, teens have always had sex, teens will always have sex. Forever and ever. But today, we have the ability to prevent STIs and unwanted pregnancies. We can do this through birth control, through reproductive rights. And yet, these speakers fight this trend. So, what are these speakers, some of the things that these speakers say? All right, here we go. Girls, the reason it's so hard for you to succeed these days is not because of you, of guys. You're doing it to yourselves. There's a little bit of misogyny. God of men are wild. They keep women covered up. So, again, if you don't cover the women, men will attack them. We will not invite this speaker back to our school. That's a great thing from that school, because that guy was a misogynist and spreading ignorance. Here we go. This person claiming that they've spoken at lots of public schools. A culture of immodest women will necessarily be a culture of uncommitted men. So if men can get sex for free, they won't marry. That's if you believe that marriage is an institution that should be continued, or you believe it's an institution that's important. Not everyone does, and not everyone views marriage the same way. I work with the man whose father has 4 wives. Marriage is not what many social conservatives in America will tell you. Not to mention, some people don't have sex with members of the opposite gender. Some people have sex with members of the opposite gender and their own gender. And some have sex with anyone they happen to like. It's not a binary world. It's a joke to think that the girl needs to be the chastity cop, but to reach a level of mutual respect in society, I don't think Daisy Duke shorts are going to expedite the process. What someone wears or doesn't wear is none of your bloody business. And it does not send any message to anyone except that this person wants to wear that piece of clothing. If you take birth control, your mother probably hates you. There's a nice piece of advice. This is from a paid speaker, remember, speaking to teens, many of whom have been given the responsibility of driving, because in many places in America, you can drive at age 16. You can here in the state of New Hampshire. In fact, our age of consent is 16, which makes perfect sense to me. If they can trust you with a vehicle that can kill them, we should be able to trust them with their own bloody bodies. And here's a good one. According to your health textbook and all of the medical textbooks and science textbooks and biology texts, apparently there's a lot of textbooks involved in this quote, conception is when life begins. That's wrong. Well, it's right in the sense that life began about 3 billion years ago and it's continuing to be alive. It may be true that cell division begins at conception. That could be viewed as correct. But it doesn't necessarily mean that a human being begins at conception, and that's the important thing. We in the Western world have come to the conclusion that a human being can end. You can be declared legally dead. A person who is in a decidedly vegetative state can be declared legally dead even though their body breathes and processes nutrients and expels waste. Because there's nothing left up here. So, there has to be a point before something is here. And there is the philosophical argument. When does a human being cease to be human and become a human being, which is a dynamic process? This is a human hand. If I cut it off, the hand is not a human being. It is just a hand and biological waste. A human being is a process. It is not a thing. That killed more cells than a plasticist has. But I am not up for a murder or manslaughter. Why? They were human cells. They were not a human being. And there's the difference. So while life has continued for billions of years and will continue for billions of more, a human being begins at some point between conception and birth. And we don't really know where yet. So that person lied. And here we have one. Let's see. Do you get closer to your God or do you get further away when you have sex? Now, that right there is an incredibly loaded question. It is my opinion that the two human beings cannot get any closer than when they have enjoying the intimacy of sex. And that sex itself is a divine act. But then again, I view all human beings as divine. Every single one of them. So whenever they do anything together, it can be considered a divine act. Some use their divinity for positive things, and some use their divinity for negative. These speakers are using their divinity for negative acts. They are spreading ignorance and fear and anxiety and depression and shame. They are harming the developing psyches of teenagers in America. At a point when people are questioning who they are and what they want in life, these speakers come in and they crush those thought processes and hand them pablum that is going to endanger their lives and put them at risk of ending up pregnant or in relationships with someone they may not want to be with because they're teenagers and they don't have the world's best decision-making processes. Your average human being's mind does not reach its full maturation until sometimes in their 20s. So we should be shoving birth control at teenagers by truckloads so that they make it past that maturation point healthy and without children until they can make a clear and concise and informed decision about what they want to make. But they're going to have sex. So these speakers are wasting our time, our money, and endangering our teens. And we need to stop them. People need to stop using public funds to further the aims of social conservatives and ignorance.